Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Harkleroad-Adams channel here on YouTube. I am your host, Drew Hare. I'm with our analysts, Chris Adams and Matt Harkleroad. Say hi, guys.
Hi, I'm Matt.
The other one's Chris. Hi, guys. And we are here to preview Super Bowl 55 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're only a couple of days away from that. But before we jump in, I know we haven't really gotten a chance to talk too much since the conference championship game. So let's kind of take a couple minutes just to kind of recap our thoughts on those before we really dive into the big game. So, Chris, I know that you were the big Green Bay Packers fan and pushing for them over the last couple of weeks. And obviously they've looked really good, but Tampa Bay winning 31-26 going into Lambeau and beating the Packers. That was certainly an interesting game. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay just couldn't execute when they needed to. The coach has taken a lot of flack for kicking the field goal there instead of going for it on 4th and 9 there, which I think that's rightfully so. But also, I think Aaron Rodgers needs a little blame there for. He could have very likely ran for the touchdown on 3rd down, or at the very least picked up a good chunk of yardage and made it like a 4th and 2 or a 4th and 1, where it would have been a no-brainer to go for it. But they still had a chance. They had Tampa in 3rd and long, and Brady made plays, which Brady has done his whole career. I mean, he shook off 3 interceptions. And made the plays when he needed to, and showed why he's the GOAT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you go back to what this game was all about, it was missed opportunities, and honestly, it was the Tampa Bay defense playing really well. The interceptions that Brady had, if you put it down on paper before that game started that Green Bay was going to get 3 picks off Brady, that looks like in a box score that's a win for Green Bay. But all of those interceptions were like punterceptions. They were long passes down the field on 3rd down. And that's a smart way to go if you've got 2 burners and 2 guys that can fight for catches down the field, and maybe a 3rd if you add Antonio Brown to that mix. I just feel like Green Bay had their chances. I don't like going back to the kick, the field goal kick. I didn't hate the decision. I thought maybe it was a solid play. Making yourself go for 2 is tough, and that only gets you to a tie anyway. Kick the field goal, get the ball back. You think there's enough time. What's the difference if you turn the ball over there, or you do it, you score 3 points and then turn the ball over there? To me, it's the same. It's hard to complete 4th and 9s anyway. The math just isn't there. But, I think if it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, you have to trust your defense in that case either way, and they didn't come through. We could talk about Aaron Rodgers not playing the best game of his life, which is true. Didn't throw a ball away. Didn't get lots of interceptions. I'm with Chris. That was a touchdown probably, or if he runs that ball on 3rd down. But he's Aaron Rodgers, and his first thing is to keep his eyes down the field and throw the ball, and that's what's got him here in the first place. So you can't really fault the guy too much for that decision. But yeah, honestly, that Tampa Bay defense looked great. If they can continue to put kind of pressure on Mahomes, and that's the only way you can beat Mahomes really, is to keep him in the pocket and, kind of make him make quick decisions. Even then he can still beat you, but that's the way you do it. So, they kind of look like maybe they're primed to be in this game. And obviously they're the best team in the NFC right now. So we'll see, but it was a fun game. It just, Green Bay just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and Vita Vea coming back after missing a lot of time. He really made a huge difference for that Tampa Bay defense. But yeah, I think you're right. It's maybe it's a different story. We might be talking about Green Bay in the Super Bowl if that was a real questionable pass interference call that gave Tampa Bay that 1st down at the end of the game. And
right,
was.
Also, we're missing talking about bad calls, and the call that cost Mike Pettin his job there at the end of the first half.
Gosh, yeah.
Have a safety back there that deep touchdown bomb right before the first half that totally changed the complexion of the game. Green Bay Green Bay doesn't have to make a decision on kicking the field goal or going for the touchdown there if they don't give up that bomb to Tampa at the end of the first half. So terrible call by the defense, but also terrible execution by the guys on the field.
That is straight out. That's straight
You
out of
can't-
Madden too. You know,
Yeah, you
just
can't
somebody
leave a
blowing
guy
play
with
like
that. You can't leave a guy with that amount of speed free down the sidelines. I mean, the guy is real quick. Okay, he's like
He's literally
he's
on the
not.
field to do one
Yeah.
thing: go long.
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can't not know where that guy is, or nor that he's gonna just go downfield. Like you can't do that. That's really bad. Either it was a real huge mistake by one safety, or it was really bad design play call, and I think it was a combination that made that happen. But yeah, that's a rough play.
Mm-hmm. As we look at the other conference championship game between the Chiefs and the Bills, it's ended up being 38-24 Chiefs. I think it's kind of what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, Matt, is that the Bills can score, but can they score enough to keep up with the Chiefs? And the answer was no for most of that game.
Yeah, and this one, in that first half especially, they just could not get the ball in the end zone, and you can't kick field goals. You can't trade field goals for touchdowns against any team and win, and you can't especially do that against Mahomes and this unbelievable Kansas City offense. There's just too many weapons for you to make mistakes like that and not, and not capitalize when you have the opportunity. And, the score at the end of the game, maybe a little closer than even the game felt, to be honest. It just kind of was a trudge down the field fest every series. It felt like Mahomes was going to score something, and most likely a touchdown, especially in that first half. And then just you couldn't get anything back coming the other way. 3 points. And it's, the story of kind of most teams when they play this Kansas City team is that if you can't match them point for point, it's tough. It's really tough because you can't shut this offense out. And so you've got to be able to score in bunches, and they just couldn't.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that other than I think we were kind of underrating the Kansas City defense going into these playoffs. They kind of struggled down the back half of the season, gave up a lot of points, and maybe they were just playing with a little lack of interest there. But you saw there first against Cleveland, and then really against Buffalo. A lot of bend but don't break, right? They gave up plays, they gave up yards. Teams moved it down the field, but then drives sputtered out, and they had to kick field goals. Both Cleveland and Kansas City or in Buffalo. And like you said, Matt, if you're the Chiefs and you're forcing teams to kick field goals, you'll take that. Because with Mahomes in that offense, that's a recipe for a win. So yeah.
Yep. So let's go ahead and shift gears to the game. Let's shift to Super Bowl 55 between the Chiefs and the Bucs. Right now, the Chiefs have opened up as a 3-point favorite. That feels right, even if Tampa is technically playing this game at home. But Chris, what is jumping out to you as kind of the keys of the game, just based on your initial thoughts before 3-4 days before this game happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think that line seems about right. I think Kansas City is the better team. I mean, they've clearly been the best team in the league all year. But the Patriots that's not the Patriots, God. The Buccaneers
There it is.
a hot streak. And they've got Tom Brady going into this game. So I think it's going to be like Matt said, can they put pressure on Mahomes? Can Sue and the boys up front get a little pressure and kind of rattle Mahomes a little bit? Can the Kansas City put together enough of a running game to keep Tampa honest in that regard, between Bell and Williams and some of the other guys there, or will they even try? Who knows? On the other side, does Brady still have enough in the tank for another Super Bowl? I think yes. I think he's going to show up. He wants this ring. He wants to be able to match Peyton Manning in winning Super Bowls with two different teams. It's sort of maybe one of the only feathers left to put in his cap. But he's still over 40, right? He's had some games this year where he's every bit of his age. Now they haven't been in a while during Tampa's winning streak, but that's still an option. I also think maybe an underrated factor of this is that Kansas City offensive line is pretty beat up. And if we talk about getting pressure on Mahomes as a big key for Tampa Bay, that's gotten a lot easier for Tampa in the fact that the Chiefs may be down several starters on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, if you take a look at, the interesting things that are going on. Basically, Arians has basically come out and said that he's letting Tom call his offense, and which is what made Peyton Manning's run, especially the second one, so impressive for not having the physical tools. He just was able to call every play on the fly, which is a huge advantage. Yeah, and a huge advantage to be able to call when you can see the defense sitting there. It's hard to get plays from the outside into your ear during that and then tell everybody what to do. It's a whole lot easier when all that stuff happens in one place. So, I think that's a really interesting, little chess match we're going to see. If I'm Tampa Bay, I think the blueprint's there defensively. Put as much pressure as you can on Mahomes. Don't let him get outside the pocket. For sure, keep your ends, have them blitz upfield as opposed to inside, so he can't roll out and kill you with long, drawn out plays because somebody's going to get open. There's too much talent down there. And I think, also if you're Tampa, maybe just pick your poison. Let one guy run wild and see what you can do. Let Kelsey catch 150 yards of passing and then just try to stop everybody on the outside or everybody deep, take the top off, make the defense take the top off the offense. So go, reverse and say, hey, we're not going to let you do anything that's downfield and outside, right? So we're just not going to allow that. And then just see what happens. Yeah, sure. I mean, Kelsey will probably have the biggest game by a tight end ever in the Super Bowl, but I'm not sure that's enough if you can slow them down enough in that way. And, on the other side, Kansas City's, we know what we're going to get out of Kansas City's offense. They can beat you with tons of different guys. But Brady was spreading the ball around really well in that game against Green Bay. And again, defense didn't play bad. The Green Bay defense wasn't horrible. I mean, Tom just seemed to find open people all day long in different spots. I think the Kansas City defense and the Green Bay defense are pretty similar in that way. I think you can find guys. So we'll see, how it all shakes out. And with, Kansas. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the more interesting battle in this whole thing is going to be what Kansas City's defense does to Tom Brady to try to rattle him as opposed to the other way. I mean, I think we know what's going to happen on the one side, but you've almost got to, there's going to be so many disguises and changes at the line of scrimmage that, they're going to have to be playing some weird zones and things all day long because they're not going to be able to just man up because he's going to beat that. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think that's the chess match to watch out for.
Yeah, and don't forget this is a rematch. These two teams met, the week after, I think right after Thanksgiving too, and it was a 3-point game there as well. Now I don't think, Tyreek Hill's going to have 270 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns like he did last game. I mean, I probably don't think, maybe Mahomes gets 460 again like he had that last game, but just I think having a little bit of data, not just watching game films from respective conference championship games, but also the fact that they've also can take game film and plans that they've already tried to adapt to, in the last 2 months, it can be very interesting as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a fun matchup. I think, no teams go that big and then play again and then go that big again. You see teams play twice a year, multiple times. I mean, everybody does it to 3 other teams every year, right? And you don't see them be like a 100-point total score game and then come back the next time and do it again. These teams are too good for that. The defensive, offensive staffs and the players are too good for that to happen. So I wouldn't be shocked if the score was significantly lower this time, especially and yardage be a lot lower than that time too. So we'll see. But it's kind of been trending that way too. The playoffs haven't been super high scoring games as a whole. I don't think, I think defense is probably just playing better. It's just the way it goes this time of year. So.
Yeah, because the Chiefs and I think both Chiefs and Bucs put up a lot of yards, but it was only 27-24. I mean, that game. I mean, that could definitely be a score that we see this upcoming Sunday. So, do you guys have your final score predictions? Chris, how about we start with you? Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back and forth this week. I still things could change in the next couple of days, but I am going to say Kansas City 38, Tampa Bay 35.
I like a lot of scoring on that one. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way, and I think I've convinced myself during this conversation to take the Buccaneers here. So I'm going to go Buccaneers over Kansas City. I'll say they're going to beat them by 6 points. So we'll go 24-30.
Okay.
I was doing quick math there.
Who do you guys have any MVP predictions? Obviously, we're going to shift to talk about some other prop bets and whatnot, but is there a MVP thought that you have, quarterback or non-quarterback? Matt, let's go.
I mean, maybe we should do this. We should say like non-quarterbacks, just because it's simply the MVP is going to be Brady or Mahomes,
right.
Especially with scores like we just predicted. But I'll go out and throw, since I've taken Tampa. You could certainly say Kelsey or what Matt said, and Kelsey has a big game like that. I'm going to go really off book here, and I'm going to say Honey Badger.
Okay.
I think that Brady is prone to throw some picks. We talked about he threw 3 in the last game. Their offense really is sort of designed to not worry that much about him throwing interceptions. So I think that there's going to be plays to make there in the defense, and he's the one guy who maybe will get an interception that's not just a punterception, but he might make a big play. He's the guy who could turn a pick 6. Maybe he gets a forced fumble or fumble recovery. But he's the one guy who could make a play on defense, maybe get a defensive touchdown out of that. And that would be the difference in what I'm predicting to be a pretty close game. So I'm going to go Honey Badger. Why not?
I like it. Matt, how about you?
Probably be, if the Chiefs win, it
probably will be Mahomes. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, if my prediction comes true, there's no way it's not Brady. So, right. But I will take someone he has to throw the ball to. I'll take Mike Evans, just because I think if there's going to be a guy that gets a ton of yards and a ton of catches, it's going to be Mike Evans on that team. And the guy's been so consistently good his whole career in the shadows of the NFL. It would be huge to watch him have a giant breakout game in the Super Bowl. Even Super Bowl insiders, people. I mean, but he's not like I wouldn't call Mike Evans a household name in the realm of like your Odell Beckham Jr.'s and your Tyreek Hills. But the guy's been great forever. So it would be nice to see a guy like that, take that trophy home, even though it's not going to happen.
Matt, I'm glad to see you're finally coming on to the Mike Evans bandwagon, because I know we've argued over him in our receiver rankings. I've consistently ranked him higher than you, so I'm glad to see that you're finally buying into Mike Evans.
I mean, in my defense, I've always liked Mike Evans. I just there's other guys I like in the same realm just as much, like a Keenan Allen or and that's I think where we're arguing back and forth which of those guys we'd rather have. But yeah. I'm okay with either of them. They can come over to the Browns anytime.
All right, as we kind of shift away from the MVP talk, let's talk prop bets, which is pretty much what everybody's here for us to talk about. So some of the prop bets, I mean, obviously this is a weird year. We can all recognize that. So obviously we have the prop bets are always going to be, you're always going to have the same ones. What color is the Gatorade that gets splashed? Was the first, scoring play in this Super Bowl? There's a lot of very, generic ones just kind of pop up. How long is the national anthem going to take this year? That type of stuff. But it's just a handful of prop bets that I found out there earlier today. I just want to kind of run it by our 2 analysts here. First, which will be said first on the broadcast? Masks or coronavirus?
Coronavirus.
I'm going to say masks.
Okay. Which will be said or mentioned first? That this is Tom Brady's 10th Super Bowl, or that Tom Brady is 43 years old?
Oh, they're going to be in the same sentence. That's tough. I'm going to say he's playing in his 10th Super Bowl at the age of 43 will be the sentence, and I'll go with 10th.
I'm going to fully agree with Matt on that. That will be the sentence. Although, they could say he's 43 years old playing in his 10th Super Bowl. So yeah,
right.
I'll go different. I'll say yeah. But either way, we both agree it'll be the same sentence.
Yeah, it's going to be the sentence just flopped. Yeah.
Will Tom Brady score a rushing touchdown? Yes or no?
Yeah. God, no. No, it won't happen.
Which head coach's nostrils will we see first? But either based upon the mask being taken off, or just the fact that they're just not going to have it over their nose.
100%. I know the answer to this. Okay, so if you've got money, go take it, put all of it on this. Okay, that new mask that Andy Reid is using, you can't take off. Like, it's tied above his glasses. Like, it's up here, and it's that weird sack one that's open at the bottom. There's no chance that mask's coming off. So take your money to the bank that it's going to be Arians or push. But I think, doesn't Arians wear the face
Arians
shield?
wears like the visor. I thought he wore the visor.
Yeah.
He wears a face shield, and like, so it's definitely going to be Arians. So like, if that's a bet out there, take your money and throw it all on Arians.
Will the weekend be seen with sunglasses when begins his halftime performance? My assumption is yes. I don't think I've ever seen him without sunglasses in listening to him for about 8 to 9 years.
I'd say yes, and I think the better prop bet will be like, is his face going to be underneath bandages or not? That's the question. Will there be bandages at some point on his face during his performance?
Sure.
Will Jim Nantz or Tony Romo accidentally say that Tom Brady still plays for the Patriots, at any point during this game?
I'm going to say no. I mean, I think those guys are too on top of it.
Yeah, I'd say Romo's too spry and smart for that. And then Nantz is like the best, like the most on it sports analyst, not analyst, what are they called? Sports commentator. Yeah, a commentator that, there is in the game right now. I mean, he's just so locked in and good. I don't see it happening. Yeah.
They're not going to make the mistake that I did earlier in this video. So
yes.
And the last one I found, will GameStop stock be over 99.99 on February 7th, 2021?
I don't think so. I think
very 2021 prop bet.
Yes.
I'm gonna go no. I'm gonna go under.
I will also say no.
Well, it's trading at 57 as of today, so I think you guys are both gonna be right. But either way, stay away from that one. Before we completely switch away from the Super Bowl, we were kind of talking about this as like a potential discussion point right before we hopped on, but just more of an overarching discussion about the state of the game and the players in the game. How many Hall of Famers are playing in this game? I think from both teams in a combined sense. I mean, I think we all three probably agree that it's definitely Brady and it's definitely Gronk at this point. We know there's a lot of potentials like Mahomes and Kelsey on that trajectory, but who all is going to be making the Hall of Fame, do you think, between now and the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, I would say that's a good question, Drew. I think you kind of break it down into a couple tiers, right? So like you said, I think there's two guys who have their tickets punched, and that's of course Brady and Gronk. And then you go into, like you mentioned, Kelsey and Mahomes are two guys who should be there unless they suffer a career-ending injury on Sunday on that trajectory. And then it gets a little bit more up for debate after that. Is Ndamukong Suh, has he done enough in his career? Certainly, I think if he gets a championship here, I think he's trending towards yes. You put him in that group as well, especially if they get a win here. He might be there anyway, but especially if they can get it done here. And then you're looking, I think Tyrann Mathieu is certainly trending in that direction. He's kind of there with Sue. Maybe he's done enough already, but maybe just needs a little bit more to just cinch it. And then maybe looking at if Tyreek Hill and if he plays with the Chiefs his whole career with Mahomes and continues on this trajectory and stays out of trouble, he might put up numbers too that allow it. Matt, anyone else where I didn't mention there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike Evans is on a solid trajectory to make the Hall of Fame. If he continues his production level that he has done so far this far in his career, I think if you look across the whole thing, I mean, I think Ndamukong Suh's probably done enough at this point, even in his career, to be at least on ballots and most likely in, I think. Tyrann Mathieu's probably got a couple of years he's got to get under his belt, but if any kind of production, he's probably in. I think I think your list is pretty all-encompassing. I'm sure there's another guy out there that we're just missing and not thinking about, but
Frank Clark,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, maybe there, or um, maybe if Shaq Barrett can have a couple more solid, really good years, a guy like that could get in there. But I don't know. And then some of these guys are super young too, like Chris Godwin, super young. So
Levante
who knows what you're
David.
going to get at? Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
if Antonio Brown gets on another team that's loaded and can get into the Super Bowl a couple more times and have maybe he comes back and has two more 2,000-yard seasons, like that might be enough for a guy like him to, like, when you think about his career and where it went and how it comes back, maybe that's enough of a storyline to get you in. But sports writers vote for these things, so my guess is Antonio Brown probably never gets in, but that's just we'll see.
Right. Yeah, because Antonio Brown, I mean, overall, I mean, he was obviously, we kind of judge things based on fantasy football at times, but like, being the number one overall receiver for 3 or 4 years, 4 out of 5, before obviously his time went south in Pittsburgh. But, he's in the top 25 in, receptions in the league. Obviously, I think he's in the top 30 for receiving touchdowns and stuff like that. So, I mean, he probably just doesn't need more than just another year or two potentially. And obviously, if he gets stays out of trouble and gets another ring or two, then he probably get pretty darn close.
I mean, it's a very subjective formula, but I think most Hall of Fame voters approach it from the standpoint of what are your numbers like, right? Did you play long enough to compile enough numbers? And then B, at any point in time, were you one of the best people at your position in the league?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, for how long? Antonio Brown certainly was for a few years there. The question is, was that long enough? And what will his total numbers look like when it's all done? And then, of course, his relationship with the media is also very questionable. So.
Well, and that's kind of the discussion we were having when we were talking about all the different quarterback stats.
Yeah.
How Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan were probably going to end up in the top 10, in terms of just overall stat compilation, and just, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this entire era, as much fun as it is to live through, and feels like we have a lot of guys who potentially could make the Hall of Fame, whether that's, their cases are really going to be hurt. Based on the overall.
If you look at wide receiver numbers, there's so many good young wide receivers in this league right now that even if Antonio Brown is continuing to play in this league for the next couple of years, he's probably going to get passed by guys that are playing right now, because there's just so many guys putting up huge numbers. Like, I don't know where Michael Thomas is on that thing, but I guarantee 2 more years of Michael Thomas playing the way he's playing right now, and the yards he gets, if he can stay healthy, of course, he's going to get wherever, AB was at that point. So, I mean, there's so many guys like that, that the list just goes on and on and on of guys that are going to continue to play at high level. So it's going to be really hard for a wide receiver without gaudy statistics or lots of wins or a healthy relationship with the media to get in, I think. And he unfortunately doesn't have any of those things really. So, but again, if he plays a couple more years, gets a couple more 1,000 yards, moves up into the 20s, you got a real conversation happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of one of those quarterbacks we just mentioned, Matt Stafford, let's go ahead and talk about
Drew.
you know what? I love a good segue, Chris.
That's why
let's talk about let's talk about the Matt Stafford trade, which, I mean, it seemed like that came out of nowhere in terms of, like, we saw that the news had come out that, with Dan Campbell now ended up as the coach in Detroit, that Stafford probably wasn't long for Detroit. But I don't think anybody really saw that he was going to be going that, before the Super Bowl, and definitely not going to be traded to the Rams for Jared Goff and Jared Goff's contract. So let's just recap before we talk about it. So that Stafford traded for Jared Goff, a 3rd round pick in 2021, and then 1st round picks in 22 and 23. And I'm pretty sure by the time 2024 rolls around, Jared Goff will also be the last 1st round pick the Rams have actually made. It's incredible. Chris, what were your initial thoughts on it when you saw it come across?
Yeah, I kind of, like you said, I mean, we knew Stafford was going somewhere, right? They came out and said that the Lions and Stafford had mutually agreed to part ways, and they were gonna. And actually, an underrated story to this is the fact that, like, Stafford wanted to go to the Rams. They were his top choice. Obviously, they gave Detroit a good package, but it's an example of Detroit wanting to do right by probably the best quarterback in their franchise history. So that's kind of cool. They were able to work things out mutually. But yeah, I mean, we had been talking. The news had been speculating the Colts or maybe the Niners, maybe Washington, and then the Rams just kind of pounced on it. And once I kind of, the three of us kind of exchanged a few texts about this last Saturday night when it happened, and then we were all shocked. And then, the next day after we had a kind of time to process, I actually think it's a pretty solid move for both teams. Detroit gets a talented but very inconsistent quarterback, but still a pretty good guy who can go in there and potentially maybe potentially get the keep the team competitive as they begin to identify what their long-term plan at the quarterback position is, whether they're able to get the best out of Goff and get him to really get more consistent and reach his potential, or if using these assets they've acquired to move up in this draft or in a future draft to get their guy, or maybe they use these picks, they go with Goff and they use all these first rounds to inject talent into a team that severely needs it. So yeah, good move for the Lions there. On the Rams side, they're rolling the dice, right? They determined that they've gotten as far as they could go with Goff. I think the writing was on the wall when they started John Wofford in the first round of the playoffs. Even though they said that Goff was injured and he was, but still. And the Rams clearly are in win now mode. They bring in an upper tier quarterback in Stafford. It seems like Matt Stafford's been around forever, but he's only 32 years old, which is pretty young for a quarterback. So he can go into that system. He's hungry to win. He aligns with the Rams timeline, which is win now with the trading their picks and Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and some of the other great players on that team. And I also give credit to the Rams for identifying this and going for it. You've read a lot about all the quarterbacks who may or may not be on the move this year. Deshaun Watson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Carson Wentz, maybe even Aaron Rodgers,
David Carr,
all those guys to actually move. But Stafford was a guy who was clearly available. He might not be, if Watson is truly on the market, he wasn't the best guy on the board, but he's pretty darn good. And I give credit to the Rams for pouncing and being aggressive and making it happen.
Yeah, I think for me, for the Rams point of view, if they win a Super Bowl, this is a great trade, right? That's all it needs to be a great trade, is if they can win a Super Bowl. I think Jared Goff was really hurt by his own injury, and not the way you usually see where somebody comes in and takes the job, but you saw that, man, this team is just as competent with these other random guys playing quarterback as they were with Jared Goff playing quarterback. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, per se. Jared Goff had a couple of really good seasons, but then, he's just kind of trended down, and maybe, so there's some truth to, him wanting to be out of there too, according to him. I don't know. I don't know if that's a cart before the horse situation. Once you realize that they didn't want you, now I don't want them either. I never did, that kind of thing. But and I think for the Rams, if they're thinking that they're going to be in the mix for a Super Bowl every year, they traded away second round picks, right? So this isn't huge for them. They got rid of a giant contract. They have way more cap room than they did before, because they just signed Goff to that extension, last year, the year before, whatever it was. So, that was a big money contract. Stafford's on the tail end of what was pretty big at the time for him, but it's not big in quarterback numbers right now. So I think it's a great move for both teams. I think Stafford's a really good quarterback. There is no one in this game that can do more physically with an arm than he does. Him, Mahomes, and maybe Jared Allen, or the guys with the biggest cannons in the league right now. And Stafford can play exceptionally well, but he's also prone to some huge mistakes. But what he has now is something he never had in Detroit, which is a good defense to help him out of those situations when he makes big mistakes. So I think this could work all around, honestly. And maybe when it's all said and done, I think we could, if they end up getting like the 32nd pick 2 years in a row coming up, and they have Jared Goff and it doesn't pan out, maybe this looks like a real failure for the Lions. But ultimately, what other option did they have when they, come out and said they're going to split part ways? So get somebody that's decent. I just think my guess is they're going to go quarterback pretty soon.
Yeah, you just take the talent, and then the 32nd pick. I mean, that's what the Rams are expecting, but there's still going to be a lot of good players for the Lions to pick. That late first, early second round.
And
range.
maybe they package a couple of these picks in a year or two and move up to get their quarterback of the future.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Or somebody to potentially replace Kenny Galladay or something like that, even if they stay in place, because that team is so much so in flux, needs a lot of talent on the offensive side, and they're going to have a lot of opportunities to replace that talent. As we kind of shift to talk about another quarterback who keeps popping up in these trade rumors, and Deshaun Watson, the Texans officially hired David Culley, who was the quarterbacks. Was working with the quarterbacks with Baltimore Ravens. So not exactly who we thought might be coming to the Texans based upon our last conversation. But either way, Deshaun Watson has officially requested a trade. We'll see if the Texans accommodate that. My assumption is that they probably will. And there's probably going to be a rather large market for him out there. But Chris, who do you think, as of right now, fits the best with Deshaun Watson right now?
I mean, it's kind of tough because there are a lot of things in play here, right? He's got the no trade clause, so he's got to approve it. They're going to want a team who has multiple assets to send back their way, but also high draft picks. But Watson is going to only probably request, he wants to go win. We're assuming he wants to go win. So there aren't too many teams that have a high draft pick that also are able to win. So that kind of brings me back to Miami. They have the number 3 pick in this year's draft, which ironically was Houston's pick, Laramie Tunsil deal. They also have their own pick in this year's draft. So that's 2 firsts this year. They've got a really pretty good young and up and coming team. I think they maybe played over their heads a little bit this year, but they've got a good coach. I don't know what Houston thinks about Tua, but he is a young quarterback that they could take back in a deal and try him out and use the picks on other positions this year. And then if Tua doesn't pan out, then they get a quarterback next year. So I'm gonna still say Miami, although I'm not gonna rule out a crazy trade coming out of the NFC, maybe a San Francisco or Washington. But right now I would say Miami.
Yeah, I mean, Miami makes the most sense for Houston, and maybe for Miami too. I don't know. Honestly, it's so hard to predict these big blockbuster trades because you don't know what anybody's willing to move and what they're trying to get rid of and what the cap implications of all that stuff are. I mean, the big names have been Miami, the Jets, and the Raiders right now. Those are like the big rumors flying around, right? So the Jets makes a ton of sense. They make that swap. They get Deshaun Watson. You get a quarterback of your future right off the top in that draft to replace Darnold. That's not a horrible situation to be in. Houston to Miami makes too much sense to me almost to work. Like, it just seems like they have to give up. Miami's giving up a ton of stuff in that trade to make it happen. And I'm not sure anybody else is going to be able to get close. So if they want him, they can have him, I think, but I'm not sure they're willing to do that. I don't know. The Raiders one is very interesting to me because if I'm Houston, that's a trade I take because I think Derek Carr is the serviceable quarterback to bridge you through some tough times, right? I think that's what he is. Now, it's a guy that's going to win you a Super Bowl, but no, probably not. But you're not that team anyway. So if you can get some picks, they've got a bunch of picks too, don't they? Still think they have a ton left. So maybe not multiple firsts this year, but they're loaded in picks too. That one makes a lot of sense to me, and it would be a hell of a lot of fun to watch Gruden coach Deshaun Watson. So I'm rooting for that one, just because I don't want to see the guy go to the Jets and get more beat up than he just did in the last couple of years. And but they do. I mean, I guess they have Betcon, which so they've got a cornerstone lineman, hopefully. But still, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go to Jets if I'm Deshaun Watson, and if I can deny a trade.
The one thing about the Jets is like he would be going from one bad team to another bad team, and a bad team who had just given up a bunch of future number ones to get him. So the Jets don't have any resources to rebuild the rest of the roster, and they're not necessarily going to have the cap space because they would be taking in Deshaun's contract. To your point, Matt, the Raiders are super interesting, especially because Gruden, is the kind of guy who would pull the trigger on that. Jump in though. What I've been reading is not so much that they would send Derek Carr back to Houston. Is the idea they would try to send Carr somewhere else, like maybe Washington, for picks, and then use those picks as part of a deal, which that actually makes a little more sense to me. I love 3-team deals in any sport because I think it's a great way to make things happen. But I mean, couldn't you see something where like Derek Carr ends up in Washington? Deshaun Watson ends up in the Raiders, and Houston gets a combination of draft assets, picks from both teams somehow. I could see that. I think that would be fun. God, I mean, who wouldn't sign up for Mahomes v. Watson twice a year in the same division? Though I do have to admit, as a Browns fan, I'm hoping that somebody in the NFC can pull together the resources to make a trade and get Watson out of the AFC. With just to move out one of these log jams of great quarterbacks in the AFC, but I don't know anyone in the NFC has the resources and the cap space to make it work. So,
well, you don't want the Browns to throw their hat in this ring, Chris?
We don't have enough to give up at this point unless we're giving players. Like, what do we have? And we have the cap room. I guess that's the upside. That's the only thing we do have to join in this situation. Or we give up our good players and then he's back.
And then you're back to square one.
I don't see that.
Yeah, I saw another team that just kind of just was thrown out there that I thought would be interesting would be Carolina, to have him and McCaffrey and DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, and if they get any kind of like consistent defense. Now, obviously, like I said, I don't know what kind of package they could throw together, but that would make them a really, really interesting team, especially with the Saints in flux.
They've got a top 10 pick this year. Don't really have much in the way of assets that they can send them unless they would throw in DJ Moore. But like, I don't know. I mean, it would be very interesting though. And the NFC South, right? With Breeze presumably retiring, Brady, is probably too many more years after this. Atlanta is a super old team. That division is going to be open in the next couple of years. So maybe if you're Carolina, you take this opportunity and say, we could bring in Deshaun and maybe control this division for the next decade.
Yeah. You could almost just be a combination of the situation that you had where they just send Bridgewater out somewhere as a part of a 3-team deal, just to because Bridgewater can still be an upgrade over a number of quarterbacks that are out there. But as we kind of end this video for tonight, for this week, do you guys have any kind of thoughts over just how the 2020 season has gone? I mean, obviously we started with a lot of flux. There was a lot of consideration about, how many games are going to be missed. Or, do we have to go an extra week into the regular season? Is this going to dip into the playoffs? And, we really haven't had any kind of games be moved for, the last 2 or 3 months or so.
You have to sacrifice the bye week before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking that was going to be almost like a certainty at some point. We were talking like 2 or 3 months ago. But how do you guys feel like how this season has gone? And I know I feel kind of surprised that it's gone off the way that it has, as relatively smoothly as it has.
Yeah, I think if you were to tell me that the NFL was going to play all their games, I wouldn't have been shocked by that. I didn't think there was going to be anything that was going to stop the NFL season from happening. There's just too much cash involved, and the owners get their money from TV anyway. It's not like baseball, where baseball's hanging by a thread, where if they don't play games, some of these franchises are going to be in dire straits. Nobody who owns a football team is struggling for money. And nobody, as long as those guys are going, they're going to generate tons of revenue without people in the stands. It doesn't matter. So I knew they were going to play all the games, but I am kind of shocked that their plan kind of worked. We're just going to watch everybody and lock down facilities whenever there's an issue. And then, hope the players do the right thing, which good for the NFL players for the most part, doing the thing that everyone says that they can't do, which is be responsible human beings, and they're like animals or something, and these guys, it's that same, we talk about Houston and we make jokes all the time, but, there's an owner that legitimately said, we can't let the inmates run the asylum, when he's talking about trades and stuff a couple of years ago. So it's like this whole idea, about any young athletes, right, is that they can't get their shit together enough to like do the right thing, and then the NFL comes out and their players do this, right? This is not an organization. In fact, most of the outbreaks that were in organizations were not players that started those outbreaks. They were equipment guys and other staff and all these other people. And so kudos to the NFL for doing the right thing, the NFLPA and players doing the right thing, and keeping everyone as safe as they possibly can. So, big props there. Otherwise, this was a fun, if we look back at this year as a whole, it was a really fun football season because we got to see football in a way we don't normally get to see football. It's fun to watch calls get made on the game while you're watching it and watch defensive shifts and those kinds of things. Is it less exciting not having the crowd there? Yeah, sure. But I mean, I guess if you're a hardcore football nerd, this was a great season just for that fact. We got to see windows into things we don't normally get to see. And it was a lot of fun. I'm hoping the fans can come back. It's definitely more exciting when there's, cheering in the stands. But all in all, this is a win for the NFL, and, maybe a bigger win than anybody had as for the other sports leagues, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was certainly the league that was far and away the least impacted. Now, part of that was timing, right? They had the most time to prepare for all of this. But, kind of a fear that I had was that by the time when we got into December, that we might see teams that were out of the playoffs and really had nothing to play for, the players getting a little bit lax. And that really didn't happen. Honestly, the late season outbreaks were for teams that were in the playoff hunt. I know with the Browns and in the first round, some of the others. So like Matt said, really kudos to the players for, by and large, doing what they needed to do.
Yeah, and on that same, thing, we talk about how many, there was less impact, right? And they had more time to prepare. But hockey is getting hit harder than anybody right now. They're canceling games left and right in hockey for days at a time, right? And the NFL, moved one game really, right? They moved it from 1 week to another week. Everything else they delayed and pushed out, right? And they made it all happen. So in the time when the COVID cases were the highest ever, right? So, whatever they were doing and keeping things as Zoom friendly and as away from the whole and everybody, keeping clustered was huge. And you kind of saw some of that in that, the hard knocks early when, McVay and Anthony Lynn were, both echoing the sentiments that, whoever does the best at this is going to win, and that's I think a lot of teams drove that point home to their players that, this is an edge we can gain. And, for the most part, if you didn't miss games, I mean, you see what happened to Denver, right? And you see what happened to the Browns with, when they had whole sections go out, and that could cost a team a season, almost cost the Browns the playoffs, right? Yep. So, all in all, it was a fun season. And like I said, the players kind of proved their mettle.
Yep. And this could be our last football game to watch for the next, 6-7 months. So we're definitely I know. We're definitely going to enjoy it for sure. So thank you everyone for watching our Super Bowl preview video. Now, obviously, continue to like and subscribe here on YouTube for us. And don't forget to watch us during the off season. We're going to have all kinds of, talking about the draft. We're going to go review our quarterback, wide receiver, and running back rankings again. So we'll have that during the off season. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Hark-Adams Sports. And for Chris, for Matt, I'm Drew. Enjoy the game. Thanks, everyone.
So long, everybody.
Thanks, guys.